Hi guys and welcome back to my channel. Sorry it's been a wee while since I've done a video. I had filmed a 16-week baby update, but unfortunately it was on the same memory card that my scan video was on and I lost the clips. So I'm also going to be filming a 20-week update and that'll be coming up in the next day or two. But today's video is one that I've been asked to do a lot on Instagram, and it is going to be how I managed to juggle having a baby and still keeping up horses. So I'm just going to basically give a few of my tips on how I've done that, and obviously everyone's situation is totally different, but I'm just going to give a few ideas as to how I think it can be managed. So if you're new to my channel, my name is Gemma, I'm 26 years old and I have a little boy called Jonah who is 16 months, and I also have a horse called Murphy who I've owned now for almost 9 years. It'll be 9 years in February. So obviously I've had Murphy since I was 18, so when I first started YouTube my channel was very much horse orientated. I was riding all the time, really heavily involved in horses, and things have evolved and changed over the years just as I've grown up and started a family and everything else. So my content has changed a lot on this channel. It's not that I'm not as into horses as I used to be, it's purely that I'm not getting the same clips as I used to of horses because I have a child. Therefore I'm obviously not getting to ride quite as often, and when I do I just don't always have someone to video for me or the time to do it. So that's why my content has changed, but I do still try to keep up the equestrian element of my channel as much as I can. Obviously at the minute I am 21 weeks pregnant, so it's not easy to get horse related footage at the minute, and my horse is actually half an hour away from my house at the minute on a break, so that's why the horse related content is quite minimal at the minute. But hopefully come March time when baby number 2 arrives we will get back at the riding videos again. But that's just a little bit of background as to why I'm doing this video and what my channel is all about. So obviously a lot of my followers have sort of grown up with me, and a lot of them tell me that they are in the same position as me now, where they are either just married and planning to have children, or they're pregnant expecting their first child, or they maybe already have children and they ask me how do I manage to do both. So I thought this video might be of interest to some of my followers and even the younger ones who aren't even at that stage yet. I suppose it's something that I was worried about. To be honest, whenever I was growing up I knew I wanted to have children, and I used to think how would I cope with having a horse too, and so maybe it'll interest you all, hopefully. So the first thing I want to talk about is the planning stage when you are thinking of trying for a baby. Now obviously that's not always how it works. A lot of times pregnancy comes as a surprise and you maybe don't have that time to plan, but in my case I was married and was, you know, thinking about trying for a baby for a good while before we actually tried, so that's the perspective that I'm coming from. So when we started to think about trying for a baby, I knew that that was going to mean that horses were going to take a little bit more of a back seat in my life for the foreseeable future until my children were a bit older. So I really thought long and hard about the timing around when I wanted to have children, and when I knew that it was something that we were going to be doing in the near future, what I did was I set goals and milestones for myself that I wanted to achieve with Murphy before I got pregnant. So we kind of, from about a year before we were going to try to have a baby, I made a little list of things that I wanted to do in that year that I hadn't done before with Murphy. So the likes of doing a work and hunter show, that was one of the things. Winning a 1 meter class was a thing for me, having a double clear in a work and hunter, things like that. So you know, it doesn't have to be anything crazy, but just stuff that would make you feel that you have achieved something with your horse. And that is basically what I did in the year leading up to when I wanted to try to get pregnant. And it just made me feel that I had a little bit of quality time with Murphy. We achieved some stuff and I built up some good memories, because I knew it might be a while before I just had the freedom to do stuff like that again. It also meant that when the time came around for us to try for a baby, that I felt quite ready to do that, and I was ready to have a little break from riding for a while. I felt that I'd accomplished a few things I'd wanted to achieve. Now, I'm not a competitive rider, never have been, never will be, so my goals were very simple things. and I felt happy with that. Now maybe if you're a more competitive person it might be more difficult, but that's just, I was happy enough to have little personal goals that we achieved, so that worked well for me. On that note, another thing I think is really important if you are thinking of having children is to put things in perspective for yourself, because sometimes people have a habit of making you feel that when you're going to have children your life is ending, you're never going to be able to do anything you want again, you're not going to have time for your hobbies. Basically it's going to be rubbish and your life's over and your whole life is just going to be about your children and you can't do anything for yourself ever again. And I found that a lot when I was pregnant. Like, so many people whenever I got pregnant said to me, oh, that'll be the horses done now then, oh, what are you going to do with the horse, are you putting the horse up for sale? And it's just ridiculous, because having a baby does not mean that you no longer can have your own hobbies and do your own things in life. Clearly, as a parent, your children do come first and they are the most important thing in your life from then on. But that doesn't mean that you can't have time for yourself and have your own hobbies and interests as well. So what I would say is, try not to view having children as this end point to the equestrian things in your life, because that's what I used to do. I used to think, oh, once I have children, that's it, I'm never going to be able to do this again and blah blah blah. Whereas when you actually think about it, children grow up very, very fast. 10, 20 years might seem like a long time, but it flies by. Like, Jonah's first year has already flown by. And really in the early stages, yes, whenever you have a small baby, a toddler, you're not going to have as much time and the freedom to go and do these things. But what I did was I looked at other people I knew who had children and who also were into horses, who were further on in their journey than me and who have older children. And you know, from what I see, yes, obviously it's not the same as when you're young and have no children, but they are now out doing horsey things with their kids if their kids are interested in that. You know, it adds a whole new aspect to your equestrian life whenever you have your children to involve in that. So I looked at the fact that some people I knew were taking their kids to shows, enjoying doing that. They were going out hacking with their children and their ponies. And even for ones who had older teenage children, then they did have more freedom for themselves as well. And especially whenever their children are old enough to have moved out and everything. I know a lot of older equestrians who have total freedom now to go, you know, they're at a stage in their life where they have a good career, you know, they are able to afford to go and do these things. I even know people who are retired and they go out and do a lot of horsey events and they're free to come and go as they please. So I kind of try to remember that my whole life is not my 20s and 30s. I'm hopefully, if I'm healthy and live long enough, hopefully I will have my older years as well to enjoy horses as well. And by that stage I hope to be able to tow a trailer and whatever else. So I hope that I have lots of time ahead of me to have with horses, and even with Murphy as well. Murphy's relatively, like, he's only 11, so I still have a lot of years with him, providing he stays healthy and fit and well. So yeah, I try to remember that my whole horsey experience does not have to be crammed into my 20s or my teenage years, that there's loads more ahead of me with that, and it's fine to enjoy this time with my children and let horses take a little bit more of a back seat in my life at the minute. And hopefully in the future I'll be able to come back to it and have more freedom again to do more things with horses and to have more time to ride as well. You know, you go through seasons in life where you're going to be busier and you're not going to have time for the things that you love just as much, and then you'll have times where you'll have lots of time for it. So I just keep trying to remember that things come and go in seasons, and although at times now I don't get to ride as much as I would like to, I know that there will come a time in the future where I will be missing my children being at home and I will have more time for horses then. So, you know, it swings and roundabouts really. So if you're being put off trying for a baby because you're scared about, you know, letting horses take a back seat, I would just say, just put it into perspective, because having children is such a blessing. And you know, people tell you all these horror stories, but the benefits and the positives totally outweigh the negatives. And if it's something that you want in your life to have children, then I would not hold back on it just because you're afraid of losing out on time with your horses, because honestly you can make it work. So the second thing I want to talk about is how I managed pregnancy and having a horse the first time around and this time. So when it comes to pregnancy, every single pregnancy is different. This pregnancy has been totally different for me than my first one. Each person and each baby is very, very different. So I learned that very quickly, because whenever I was planning to get pregnant, I thought that when I got pregnant I would keep riding the whole time till it was uncomfortable. I just thought it would be as easy as that, and I found that that is not what worked out for me. Now I know lots and lots and lots of people who have ridden right up until their due date, or have ridden well into pregnancy, and that has worked well for them. But for me that just wasn't feasible. In my first pregnancy I was extremely sick with morning sickness, and it was all day and evenings, and it lasted the entire 9 months. So the last thing I felt like doing was riding a horse, because I did not want to be bobbing about trotting on a horse when I felt so nauseous. I did ride up until about 12 weeks, but that was around 8 or 9 weeks is when my sickness kicked in, and it just got more and more difficult from then. I think it's good to just be flexible and don't push yourself to do anything that is not comfortable for you or isn't working with your pregnancy. What I did in my first pregnancy was I rode up until 12 weeks. Then I kept doing groundwork and lunging and doing tricks with Murphy until my 3rd trimester, and then I put him out to grass for my final trimester and just let him be a horse and just chill for that time. Now obviously everyone's different, everyone can do things in different ways. I have a friend who rode till well into her pregnancy, till she was above 30 weeks, and her horse stayed relatively fit because of that. She didn't jump, but she just kept up flat work and hacking and everything. I know other people who have loaned their horse out to someone when they've been pregnant, or have got a friend to ride their horse, or have paid somebody to ride their horse. That just wasn't what I wanted to do, because I just feel that Murphy's quite an odd horse, and I didn't want to risk him going to the wrong person. He's quite an easy horse to get fit, so I knew that it wouldn't be that difficult to bring him back into work, so I had no problem giving him time off for both my pregnancies. So on this occasion, whenever I found out I was pregnant, I did ride up until about 9 weeks this time, and then I decided to put Murphy out to grass because of the time of year it is. I know that in a few weeks time he won't be able to be out at grass full time anymore because it's getting so wet and wintry, so I thought I would take advantage of being able to put him out at the beginning of pregnancy. So he has been out now for 2.5 months, and he's loving life being out in the field. So he'll be coming in a few weeks time now, and then I will have him in full livery over the wettest months, and he will go back out again just before baby arrives. So this time I just felt that that was the best option for him, because to be honest, over the winter months Murphy is really sharp and fresh, and even doing groundwork with him would be a little bit too much for me with being pregnant, because he bucks a lot, he's very strong, and I just knew that I wouldn't feel comfortable with it. And as well as that, with having a toddler now, I wouldn't have the same time, so I didn't want him ending up standing in a stable a lot of the time being bored. So I just felt putting him out was the nicest option for him and the handiest for me as well, and it saves me a bit of money as well on livery, while I'm saving up, because obviously when you go off on maternity your pay is less and everything. So that was the best option for me. But what I would say is, before you get pregnant or when you're pregnant, think about what's the best option for you and your horse, and be aware that after pregnancy you aren't going to be really fit and be able to just pick up where you left off. You're gonna need time to build back up again and get fit. So having a super fit horse really isn't necessary. I found that it was quite good that Murphy had lost a bit of fitness last time, because we were able to then build our fitness back up together, whereas if he had been super fit and ready to go, he might have been a bit much for me, you know, with me being so you know, wobbly after having a baby and also recovering from a C-section. So don't put too much pressure on yourself to keep your horse really fit. Just be flexible and be aware that it's going to take you both time to get back to things after you have your baby. What I would say is give yourself time to recover, because birth and pregnancy are hard on your body. No matter whether you are like me and have a C-section or whether you give birth naturally, your body needs time to recover, and rushing in to get back on a horse too quickly could be worse for the long term. You could end up with an infection and things like that, or if you've had a C-section you could damage your scar. There's any number of things. So although you may feel you can get on very soon after birth, and many people do, I personally gave myself 5 weeks before I got back on a horse, and I'm glad that I did that, because it meant that when I did get back on, I was, you know, not too sore. I was pretty much ready to go. Now that's still quite soon after a C-section, so I did take it easy for a good while, but yeah, just be aware that you're going to need time to recover. It's unlikely that you'll just have your baby and just get back on the horse the next day and everything will be grand. A lot of people do it, but I just personally think that it's better to give yourself time, especially as you're getting used to having a baby and you know, everything that comes with that. Now obviously if you've managed to ride the whole way through your pregnancy and your body is still very used to it, that's quite different. In my situation, I hadn't been riding for about 6 months, so it took a lot of conditioning for me to build my muscles back up and everything, whereas somebody who kept riding the whole time may find it a lot easier to get back on after. In terms of finding the time for horses whenever you have a small baby, I think it comes down to being flexible in your expectations and just not putting a lot of pressure on yourself about time frames and how often you're going to do something and what days you're going to do it, because babies don't really work like that. So something that I did was I put Murphy in full livery when I first had my baby, so that I wasn't under pressure that I had to be there, you know, no matter what, to feed him and muck him out and everything. I knew that that was being done, and it meant that when I did go to the yard I was able to just ride, and I didn't have all the chores to do. And I know everybody might not be able to afford to do that, but that was something that really helped me for a short while until I got, you know, into an established routine with Jonah and everything. So I kept Murphy in full livery for a good while, and then I went back to DIY whenever I was more settled. Another point is to use whatever support system you have to get the time to go and ride, whether that is if you have a partner or husband. Whenever they come home from work in the evening, you know, take an hour, 2 hours to go to the yard then while they can look after your baby. Obviously if you're breastfeeding it can be a bit more difficult, which I was, but once Jonah got to about 5 or 6 weeks old, I was happy for Peter to give him a bottle of express milk while I was out, and I was able to go out for maybe an hour to 2 hours and leave him with Peter in the evenings and just go and have a quick ride, and it just gave me the chance to be me instead of being a mum for a while and just relax and de-stress and then come back ready to do everything all over again. So, you know, if you have a partner who's supportive and willing to do that, that's great. You know, be flexible that you can go and ride in the evenings. That's why I didn't get a lot of videos last year with Murphy, because a lot of the times I was riding in the evenings when it was dark. Also, if you have, you know, your mum or your mother-in-law to help out, have a day in the week where they take your baby for a few hours for you, so that you can go and have a day at the horses. Now I understand not everyone has that support system, and I do have friends who don't have anyone to look after their baby at all. So all I can say is get out with your baby in the early days. You know, I had Jonah at the yard from he was 5 weeks old. Babies are not really doing much at that stage, they're sleeping a lot, so take advantage of the fact that small babies sleep a lot. So you can wrap them up warm, put them in their pram and get them over to sleep. What I would say is be really flexible, because there were days that I went to the yard with Jonah and everything just went like a dream. He fell asleep at the right time, he stayed sleeping the whole time that I rode the horse, it was all lovely. And then there was days that I took him and he needed fed, right, I maybe tacked up the horse and then he started crying and needed fed, and I ended up not getting to ride and just had to take the tack off again and go home. And you just have to realise that sometimes that's what's going to happen, and you can try again another day. Don't, you know, have these big expectations of what you're going to do and when you're going to do it. Just go with the flow and see how it works out on the day. What I used to do is tag up the horse and have him standing ready to go, and then I would give the baby a feed, put him in the pram and take him a quick walk down the lane. He would usually drop off to sleep in the pram, and then I could park him alongside the arena in the pram and ride away and could see him from where I was, and if he started to cry I just had to cut my ride short basically. But a lot of the times when he was really small that worked really well, because newborns do sleep an awful lot. So obviously babies have their days where maybe they're a bit colicky or windy and unsettled, and that's why I'm saying you just have to pick your days when you do this, and not put too much pressure on yourself to have a set routine. Take advantage of any friends who are willing to help you out, whether that is lunging your horses on the day that you're not there, or, you know, watching the baby for you. Hannah thankfully was very helpful for me, and especially when Jonah was a bit bigger, she would watch him while I rode, which was a massive help. Or I do have other people at the yard who will help me out with him if he gets unsettled when I'm riding. So just don't be afraid to ask people for help, because people do love to hold and cuddle babies. So you know, it's often you find that you might think that you're bothering somebody, but they're quite happy to help you. And even if you get to ride for half an hour, sure, that's better than nothing. So just take advantage of every support you have available to you. A lifesaver for me as well was using a baby carrier or sling whenever Jonah was smaller, because I would pop him in the sling, do my chores, you know, my mucking out or whatever I needed to do, and then he would usually fall asleep in the sling and I could transfer him to the pram, and then he would sleep while I was riding. So that worked really well for me as well. If you have to go to the yard on your own with the baby and nobody is there to supervise or to check on you, I would say make sure that somebody knows you're there, and maybe consider using one of the safety apps. You can get an app on your phone that if you fall off and you're not moving for a certain length of time, it lets someone know. Obviously you have to think about that even if you're just on your own, but if you have a baby with you, it's so much more important that somebody knows you're there, and if something happens to you, somebody will come up and check on the baby and you as well. So just keep that in mind, that safety is even more important whenever you're there with your baby. I normally would never jump if I was there on my own with Jonah. I would only do flat work. It's just personally I just wouldn't feel comfortable jumping if I was there, in case I fell off or anything happened. Obviously I could fall off doing flat work too, but it's just a precaution that I like to take. I found that breastfeeding was really helpful in me managing horses as well, because it's so easy to feed at the yard. You don't need to worry about access to hot water or sterile stuff. The milk is already heated, it's already sterile, and you can just pop baby on and feed and you're done. So if that's another reason for you to consider breastfeeding, then I would definitely consider it. It just is so handy and useful for days at the yard. When Jonah was a bit bigger and was needing to have tummy time and to, you know, roll about and play with toys, or even recently when he was starting to crawl, I brought a travel cot to the yard with me, and I would set up the travel cot at the side of the arena, put loads of toys in it for him, and he would quite happily play there for half an hour while I rode, and he would, you know, watch me and Murphy and play, and I could see him, he could see me, and it worked really, really well for us. Now that he's bigger and he's walking now, I don't know how I'll manage things. I haven't really had to consider it because I've been pregnant and I haven't been riding anyway, but I'm just going to roll with it and see how things go. I'll either make sure that I have somebody to help me with Jonah whenever I want to ride, or I'm not sure how I will keep him contained. I do have the pram that he still quite likes to sit in to watch me riding and things like that, and I suppose it's just about involving your kids in what you're doing and having them take an interest in, you know, the mucking out or the feeding, things like that. Get them involved, because when they're bigger they will thank you for it, because I'm sure they will love being around horses. Jonah already loves the horses and he's only 1 and a bit, so I'm looking forward to the future when hopefully he can get a wee bit more stuck in and maybe get into riding himself as well. So that's just how I've managed so far from being pregnant to now having a 16-month-old toddler. Obviously things will get more difficult now that Jonah's walking and he's going to need more entertainment, so I'll maybe do another updated video in the future as to how to manage horses and having 2 kids or having an older child. But if you guys have any tips for me who have older children, let me know in the comments. I hope this video is maybe of some help to any of you who are expecting a baby or thinking about trying for a baby. I suppose at the end of the day it's just remembering that even if all else fails and you're not able to manage your horse and your baby, you'll not regret having a baby, I don't think, because honestly the bond and the love that you have for your child is just beyond anything in this world. And much as I adore Murphy and love him, having a child is just a whole another level. So I really hope that I don't ever have to give up horses entirely, but if I did, it still wouldn't make me regret having my child. So I would just say, don't let it put you off. It is doable. Even if you have to put your horse out on loan for a little while, you know, you can come back to it in the future hopefully. Or even worst case scenario, if you find that financially you can't cope with having a horse and having a child, you know, it's always something that in future you could pick up again. But having children is just such a blessing that I would not miss out on it just because you're afraid of losing out on riding. And equally, if you're somebody who doesn't have any desire to have children and you're quite content without having children, don't feel pressured that you're missing out. It's each and every person's own choice if they decide that they want to have kids or not. But I know for me, I always grew up with that desire to have children, and it was always in the back of my mind worrying about how it would make me feel if I wasn't able to ride as much. So that's just why I'm giving you my view that it is totally worth it, because it's something I always wanted, and I don't feel that I've lost out on anything by having my children. So I hope this video wasn't too all over the place and waffly, but that's just been my personal experience of things. Let me know what you guys think of my tips, and if you have any questions for me, and any other videos you might like to see, let me know in the comments. See you next time, bye!